again, I think you at your end just have to give your permission for the recording. If you don't want, so therefore, don't say anything sort of sensitive. And if you don't want to participate in a recorded meeting, you know, I think you have to be able to enter. Anyway, so please can everybody remain muted? I'm hearing some background noise from somebody. Please can everybody remain muted? Great. So one of the things that we're also going to do is, and I just hear everybody joining here, more people joining, so please can you remain muted. We'll use the chat box for questions. So the other thing is that we're very interested to see if you guys will be interested in us facilitating another Zoom on how repair cafes are working in the CV19 world. So we're aware of various people starting new approaches and new models within the CV19 world. We're, for example, starting to go online and use Facebook. But if you're interested in us facilitating something and you are trying a new approach online or whatever, or a restricted approach in CV19, please drop us a note in the chat box so we can gauge the interest. So I think without further ado, I'm going to start. And again, please can everybody remain muted? Please, yeah, great if you can all remain muted. So this really, the goal of this workshop really is to give an overview initially of the concept of circular economy, very short introduction. Everybody, can you remain muted? And then we'll go into our lessons learned from our repair cafe, running our repair cafe, and you know, some other activities we've been undertaking in this area. So this is a sort of a joint initiative between the Farnham Repair Cafe and one of the partners, UCA. So a bit about me. I have a background in about 30 years in sustainability, business sustainability, working with NGOs, SMEs, and large organizations around the world. Done a few books, and what's very relevant for this area is what I brought to this whole area was a lot of experience of working locally with a lot of small SMEs and startups across various areas in the southeast of England. So we sort of brought some experience about how to set initiatives up from other experience. So this is a book that I recently completed, and there are actually a couple of chapters there on repair cafes. So circular economy thinking goes back, you know, historically, maybe in the origins into the sort of 90s, where there was discussion around resource efficiency, resource productivity, particularly coming from Germany and Japan. And sort of around about 2008, we had this sort of, after the last economic crash, we had this sort of growing concern around, you know, similar situation as to we are now, you know, 12 years on, you know, how are we going to regenerate the economy and societies? So there was sort of growing discussion around, again, you know, waste and moving away from the so-called take, make, waste economy to a circular economy where value circulates for a longer time in economic and social systems. So what we started seeing Google Trends was just a general growing usage of the term circular economy. And that's led to a whole series of policy initiatives and all sorts of books and other, you know, events worldwide. And behind the concept of circular economy, you've got really two ideas: the bio, you know, for want of another word, the bioeconomy and the technical economy. Bio deals with materials like wood, cotton, but more for the repair cafe side, you know, it's this idea of circulating the value in products, materials, and components in technical systems, and really as part of sort of the reuse area. So it's about product life extension. You know, how do we extend the life of products through repair? And repair, you know, is a growing, you know, interest in certainly a European level that started in the US, even now in the Circular Economy Action Plan developed by the Commission, a stronger push on the right to repair. But what we found through our Repair Cafe activities is, growing. Well, what we found is this emotional attachment. So how physical repair can, repair memories. So an emotional repair. Could have been a slide there. It might be the next. Can everybody remain muted? That would be brilliant. So there's now around about 2,000, well, precisely according to Repair Cafe Foundation website, 2,087 repair cafes. We know that's an underestimation. And indeed, I think that number has actually gone down. It was consistently growing because I'm monitoring the site. And what we've seen in the UK is a virtual doubling prior to CV19 of repair cafes to around about 125 from about a 60 base about a year ago. So suddenly UK picking up, whereas the core experience and longer running activities have been Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, and latterly France has increased. So again, what we found very much through our activities in our Repair Cafe, which is backed up by independent research that's been done, is yes, repair cafes are about the physical repair activity, but there's also a strong social and community component to repair cafes. So, and linking back into what I was saying before, sorry, I forgot the sequence of my slide, is this quite strong strong element we've seen around certain products, notably particularly furniture and related products, is this emotional attachment, that the physical repair process can repair, a memory, the grandfather giving somebody the chair, giving them the doll. So we've seen that much wider, impact of repair cafes. So a little bit of background. So we've participated in 3 global surveys of repair cafes. We undertook the first 2 with quite significant, sample sizes from around the world, and just a couple of slides there. And none of you who are running repair cafes or are in the early stages of repair cafes will perhaps be surprised from this. The highest proportion of products generally coming through repair cafes, worldwide are small electrical appliances, notably vacuum cleaners, lights, clothing, bicycles, etc. So, the pattern that I'm sure many of you have experienced is worldwide. Also, again, from our experience, and again, from the global surveys here, again, still this quite, significant finding that in repair cafes, despite, I'm sure, and please can everybody remain muted, basically despite most repair cafes dealing with products sight unseen, so they're booked in, 63% of products are repaired. And that is fairly consistent between 60-65. So despite many products not being designed for repairability or dismantleability, with the amazing skills that are sitting there in the community, a lot of products can be repaired. And still, I find that quite a significant figure. And what we found for further analysis at our side is, if you then add, information provided, advice given, I think the physical number of products where you're not repairing or not giving advice goes down to quite, maybe about 15% are dead in that sense. So we've updated this with a survey working with colleagues in the Netherlands, and all these surveys are available online. If you're interested, and please just drop a note if you're interested to receive those, or I'll leave the website at the end. So again, this survey is also sort of built on the past, but shows and reinforces questions. Excuse me. So now getting specifically into our experience, and this is going to be a little bit of like our journey, but what I'll bring out is learnings at different spaces. So we in effect now set up and have been set up as a collaborative project with different partners. So with the centre that I run at UCA, around sustainability, product and innovation. UCA at a deputy vice chancellor level, the town council at the town clerk level, i.e. the chief executive of the town, and Farnham's about a 40,000 market town size. And then also importantly with the Spire, what is now the Spire Church. And again, although we're not religiously affiliated, they are a key partner for us, and I'll bring that out. And I'll come back into a bit more of this. And again, for many of you in the area, I should probably mention that we do liaise with the Repair Cafe Foundation, but we're not in regular contact with them. We personally didn't use their starter kit because of our variety of experience, but I know many are. So again, we follow, pretty much the traditional model, I think, although I'm aware there are different models. So in our Repair Cafe, we would have, a number of workstations, what I term workstations. We have an electrical, electronics, we've got mechanicals, we've got bicycles, we've also got laptops specifically, we've got clothing and furniture. And I know some particularly have been reticent about electrical because of the insurance issues, and that's rightfully so. And I certainly have a view on that, which I'll come back to and draw out. And we deal with we've undertaken nearly 1,300 repairs across a huge number of different products. And as we all know, and particularly for new people, it's worth bearing in mind, repair cafes, it's a people-orientated volunteer business, if you like. It's about people, and it's about the volunteers. And fundamentally, you don't have a repair cafe unless you have your volunteers. And an obvious thing to say, but it's absolutely fundamental. And within our repair cafe, we've got people that with a whole variety of different experience that are coming in. And what we noted that the number of the retired or semi-retired people had retrained themselves in sort of making or repair skills. So our entrepreneur there, Ed, is not short of a few bob, but he retrained himself in furniture restoration after he was moving into, well, he's never going to retire like many people in repair cafes, but alongside the many things he's doing, he's become, built up expertise over a period of time. So just going into the background a bit now, so how did it happen? Well, for me, I was at the Hanover Fair in Germany in around about 2014, and I heard Martin Posner speak about repair cafes. And although I'd been involved many years around sustainability, I wasn't aware of so much of repair cafes. And I was very interested because I thought it was a very pragmatic form of, if you like, environmentalism at a local level. And what I did at that stage, before we'd set up the repair cafes, I thought this is a brilliant area that nobody's researched. So we did our first global repair cafe, and repair cafe survey. And we collaborated with the Repair Cafe Foundation. We also looked at other initiatives such as maker spaces and also hacker spaces, more in the making side. But this was the first global survey of repair cafes. And what we then did was ran a conference around so-called makers and fixers. And then we started an initial conversation after that with a local NGO from the Transaction Town movement. And those conversations emerged, we made a decision. Well, probably me at that stage made a decision to collaborate with the Transition Town guys who are in their sort of formative stages. I brought this experience of running a lot of initiatives in the Southeast, making it happen. Maybe this was not dealing with citizens, but it was dealing with a lot of SMEs. So we'd had, over 1,000 over the years, SMEs and micro entrepreneurs through our program. So we had experience of setting up initiatives that were also useful to bring to repair cafes. have members of your team got experience of launching initiatives locally, because there are, how you go about marketing stuff, how you go and set it up. So that sort of transferable experience is very, very useful. So I'd used one of my, we'd identified after talking to Transition Town a few interested peoples, and I ran a creative workshop approach that I developed, focused on the Repair Cafe to draw out different ideas. And really, what we then did is further discuss, the concept with the Transition Town guys. And at that stage, Transition Towns were shifting a little bit to looking at more project-based approach. So organizing, bringing in different project approaches. And at that stage was quite attractive to me, in the sense that looked like there might be some good synergy there. So what we did is really set up 2 pilots. So because nobody'd really done it, or we weren't in touch with people who are really, let's say advanced in running repair cafes, we decided with any new initiative, well, let's just test our approaches. So we actually ran 2 pilots initially to work through the process, to see how it worked, test, completion of disclaimer forms, the process, etc. And we learned a lot of useful lessons for that. So the testing and piloting, very important. You're going to learn a new thing, at least one thing every time you run a repair cafe. So having a learning culture is very important in our experience. And how you capture that is important, so you can adapt and change. So we then physically launched in February 2015, and now we're sort of 58 sessions along. And throughout our whole development, we've had many ideas, and particularly, I'll come back to this in a minute, but I'll stray off script for a minute. We've had many ideas about what we could do, but particularly we've come back down to, again, everybody's a volunteer, everybody's doing other stuff. What are people comfortable with doing? And what we really come back down to is, we originally had a goal of doing 10 repair cafes a year. And then what we've done is move that to 12 repair cafes a year. And then this approach about sharing, whatever experience we have. We've looked at, mobile repair cafes, proactive lectures, etc., etc. So many different approaches and new ideas, maybe forming a makerspace where we build in a repair cafe, but very complicated to do that, time consuming, and there's going to need to be investment. So again, there's an issue there of being really clear on what you're trying to achieve. So the early stages of this were, we piloted this, we collaborated with the Transition Town. And as we got into the process a little bit more in terms of the organization of things, one of the benefits of collaborating with an existing NGO, a Transition Town or whoever, was that, they were operating as a small charity, so we were able to piggyback on their bank account and their insurance policy. And my position was I was never going to run any repair cafe without insurance, both covering venue and product liability. And that was a tenet from day one. I'm aware that some repair cafes, even quite experienced advanced repair cafes, don't have insurance. Personally, that's absolutely not the approach that we use, but I know there is strong arguments as to why those other guys don't have insurance. But that's not just in the UK as well. We're in conversations with the guys in Silicon Valley. They run monthly repair cafes or quarterly repair cafes, so like 250 visitors, and they take no insurance. Okay, I find that extraordinary, but but interesting as well. So anyway, as we moved into our repair cafe, further more and more, we learned more and more. It became a little bit of a challenge with the Transition Town guys, because I think they were more into talking about initiatives at a local level rather than doing stuff, and so it became a little bit of a tension there. So what we came down to was really a decision. Do we continue, working and collaborating, or do we look to joint venture with somebody, or do we look at the much tougher position of the charity? So we decided, looking at those options, it was time to move on from our existing collaboration. And there were challenges there because we had to look at a new way of doing things and change our processes. We then looked at a UCA as a key employer in the town with facilities. But the main issue there, I took it right up to the top, and then chief financial officer, who then put me in contact with the insurers for the university. And I had to have 2 phone calls with the insurers of the university for them to understand what repair cafes were at that stage. But the bottom line is they said they would not insure a repair cafe with the university because of insurance issues. The perceived risk of electrical items was not something they would take on board. So we were left really with one option. And an option at that stage was to set it up as a charity. We looked at various options, and we chose the Charitable Incorporated Organisation, the CIO approach. But at that stage, there was no repair cafe that was a charity. So, and there was no case law in terms of setting up repair cafes. So we had to do a lot of work, putting a strong argument together, the Repair Cafe Foundation, and eventually we set ourselves up as the first repair cafe charity. And that meant we had to formalize our approaches. So we had to formalize meetings, minutes, decisions. We had to then bring in trustees, and then we had to produce report and accounts. Not too onerous, but it's work and it's structures and systems. And particularly, this issue, of logging decisions, very important. So, that meant that we could then set up our own, contract for our own insurance policy. We could set up our own bank account, and we were able to, move forward in our own way. At that stage, also, we had a transitionary period where we had a transition from the old structure to the new structure. And this is where the partnership with the town council was really, really useful. And they've been really positive to us in the sense that they allowed us to piggyback on their insurance policy. So as I said, I was not going to run any repair cafe without insurance. And they were very helpful. They allowed us to do this. And as a result of this, we came in contact with Zurich Insurance, who provide a really good and solid package for, not directly for repair cafes, but absolutely a much more cost-effective insurance policy. We found when we did our original research, there was a vast variety of pricing out there. But even at our conference, we found now even insurance salesmen coming to the conference who were trying to sell specific bespoke insurance packages for repair cafes. So the world has changed since we started there. So I think it's much easier to perhaps get insurance. So we set the charity up in April 2007. And really, as I said, we've set it up as in a collaboration and partnership approach, working with the university, working with the town council, and also importantly, with the church. And as I mentioned before, we're not religiously denominated or associated, but the good news is that they have their so-called I think called an ecological congregation, so that they very much welcome working with local environmental groups, and the benefit for them is they also get traffic into their own cafe, where repairers and both visitors can buy coffee. So they get some income from that. And because it's such a great relationship we have, as the trustees, we also decided to donate 10% of our balance at the end of the year to the charity, to the church. Because we evaluated the other venue options in the town, and in fact, we can't have a better venue, really. So there's this collaboration. It's not formalized, but it's a way of working, and we work with the university So for example, a number of the film students have produced films. So it's been a good bit of synergy there. We provided a place for, content for them to produce films that's useful in the curriculum. And so that's been quite useful. So in terms of visitors, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions just in a few minutes. So, volunteers, very, very important. You don't have a repair cafe unless you have your volunteers. So, how have we got our volunteers? Well, as I mentioned, from my experience of the old days of working and bringing through SMEs, I know you have to work really hard at your marketing. You have to use all forms of communication tools in a local area to try and connect with small organizations and citizens. So marketing, once you find one core person, so we had a core person, one core person who joined the original brainstorming session. He knew one other person that might be interested. Then we started to see other people coming along to some of the sessions as visitors, and then you got chatting and you found, they had amazing repair skills. So there's just a sort of process of osmosis, as people get to know it, but also it's just letting the message go out locally, using things like whoops, something's happening here. Sorry. Oh. Sorry, just an IT stress factor for a second there. I'm sure we've all been through it. So basically using things like the local social networks. So for example, in our town, the town uses Nextdoor, which is a sort of Facebook equivalent for the town. And many towns have these systems. So you can use this. This is quite active for a lot of local initiatives. So, right, do we have any questions or observations? Anything, Dave, that you would like to draw out?
There's a lot of toing and froing on your insurance point, and most people had a strong point of view that costs were high, insurance companies weren't really very sympathetic, didn't understand, but some positive things about donations covering it when they did get insurance. But obviously a lot of people are struggling with that issue.
Okay, well, absolutely. We know the issue in the early days. What we did was we surveyed, the existing repair cafes, many of whom were set up as small projects within transition towns, and those transition towns had got insurance policies that were more general. What we found was significant variation in, extortionate, actually, some of the quotes by the insurance policy companies. And they really just didn't understand the repair cafes, and they didn't understand the potential risks associated, and they didn't know how to evaluate the sort of mitigation strategies that people are going to take. So absolutely that resonates with us. As I mentioned, our experiences, we found that Zurich Insurance have a solid policy, very cost effective. And we also now found that there are at least a few insurance companies that are proactively producing, have policies seemingly directed to repair cafes. And I almost had to bat them off at the conference because they, it was real insurance salesman activity going on there. So I do recognize the point. And what's happened, I think, in the Netherlands, through the Dutch Repair Cafe system, is I think they negotiated a block policy with an insurance company or insurance companies to try and bring the cost down. So there are models in other countries, but absolutely recognise that. And again, my view, if you're dealing with electrical items, you've always got to look at the worst case scenario. If you repair a microwave, it sets fire, in somebody's house, they're injured, burns the house down, they try and sue you. If you haven't got insurance in place, you're in trouble. I mean, again, this is only my experience. But with nearly 2,100 repair cafes in the world, often running 10 to 12 sessions a year, with maybe 20 to 25 to say 30 on average, people coming through the door. Those are quite large numbers going through repair cafes around the world. At the moment, I've not heard any cases of people suing repair cafes.
No,
But that's
nobody's
not
come
to
up with
say you
any
shouldn't have an
cases.
insurance policy in place. That's
Yeah.
my view. But I think there's
No,
a sort of social contract in place, that people are bringing these products on the hope that the people can repair it. And if there is a problem afterwards, they go say la vie. But absolutely, insurance is an issue. Do we have any other cluster of points?
Can I ask, please, that you send a copy of the slides?
Again, please, can everybody remain muted? So do we have any other points, Dave?
Yeah, Martin, certainly one or two people
Dave?
picked up on you. Can you hear me, Martin?
Okay, I think...
People picked up on COVID-19.
Hello? Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I'm not hearing you. Hello?
Let's see, start with it. Does that make any difference?
Maybe I think Dave's got some sound problems at the moment. So what I'll do is we'll pick any of those other points and observations up at the end. And again, I think there's other people that we may have some opportunities for some physical questions at the end as well. So financial, big one for many repair cafes. How do you start? How do you kick it off? You kick it off with somebody's individual donation, et cetera, et cetera. So from our side, the start of it was from an individual donation, very small. But our main issue was we were able to get our venue for free because we developed this collaborative strategy. And I know for many repair cafes, there is a problem of the venue. The venue cost, etc. And, I know from my other experience, a venue for half a day, say, maybe can be 250 to 500 quid, so that's an issue, how do you fund your venue? So, financially issues again for the startups, obviously, we have different level of experience on this, getting your bank account in place. We also have a cash flow that we analyze. We also do an interim check on our bank account to make sure that any of the financial transactions are aligned with the bank account. So we do a midterm correction there. And then income-wise, at least from our side, our main focus is on donations. And we get on average about £11 donation. That is our average donation. We've had some extraordinarily high donations when I think somebody was feeling very, very positive, but our average rate is about £11 per visitor. We also get a number of small grants as well that we've targeted from the town council. That they're almost actively trying to encouraging us to do this. But again, there's a fairly key point that emerged is, we could raise a lot more money, but what would we use it for? Because we've got a very defined process. We've come down a lot of thinking and discussion. We've come down to what we want to do is run 12 sessions a year. We can come up with many other things, but that's what we're going to do. And really, we don't need huge amounts of money to do that, particularly because we get our venue cover costs, costs covered. But there is a synergy there in that there is income back to the church there through coffees, but also our donation. But also it's a sort of bigger picture there as well. So our ongoing costs really are our insurance once a year, but not necessarily significant now. And then what we also do is provide free teas and coffees for all the volunteers, up to 1 or 2 per session. So that's a sort of ongoing cost. And then we have various ad hoc costs. And our largest by far ad hoc cost, ad hoc costs. So we decided to do some polo shirts for everybody with the Repair Cafe logo on it. People seem to like that, you know. And also by far our largest cost has been, we invested in a 3D printer. So because what we're also doing is pioneering the use of 3D printing for repair. We come back to that. So in fact, our costs are not significant. They tend to be ad hoc. You know, we have some promotional costs if we redesign our logo or reduce banners, etc. But our running costs are not significant. So another key issue linked to insurance is health and safety. We're very fortunate in that one of our trustees and repairers is a CV. I see somebody putting up CV19 risk at the end. We'll cover CV19 when we deal with CV19. So, so in the normal running of a repair cafe, which I wonder what that will look like in the future. We are fortunate that we have this. I think he's some sort of a UK expert around risk that works for Atkins, the big consulting company. And what we've developed is a health and safety policy where we've identified risks and how we mitigate them. And then we have a process where we clearly communicate in the room, you know, our health and safety, the key aspects of our health and safety policy, and we remind the repairers of that. And then we do a check, you know, on leads, etc. And also we have access to health and safety and defibrillation. We know and we guide, you know, if somebody has a problem, we know where people should go. This is particularly important. We haven't had a problem yet, excuse me, but particularly because our audience tends to be 55 plus and often 60 plus. More of the issue we have, you know, straying from traditional health and safety, there is, we have some people who've maybe got some, you know, mild mental illness challenges, and sometimes some dementia issues we've seen, which just front desk needs to be sensitive about how we manage some of those issues. So again, health and safety, we try and mitigate that and think that through the issues, and I will pick up the CV19 issues in the future section. So, but there are, and I'm sure any of you that running repair cafes will understand this. I see your point, Dave. That there are just things that happen at repair cafes that you could never plan for, in a good sense, and sometimes a bad sense. So, you know, an example of a good one is, I think somebody cut their finger and they were in the line somehow, and standing next door to that person was a nurse. And we were able to tackle that straight, you know, absolutely. So you get this synchronicities things happening. Insurance, I think for time, we've had a lot of discussion over that. But certainly my personal view is, you know, yes, I recognize the challenges. We are, you know, aware that there is a cost-effective program from Zurich in place. And my personal view is that I will not run our repair cafe without insurance. Big issue, another big issue, marketing. Marketing, two target audiences, volunteers and also the visitors themselves. And the volunteers split into two categories, the front desk and also the repairers. Importantly, the front desk and the repairers. And that's a key issue. So we really use we have a big promotional toolbox. So classically, for those of you more from the business side, there's the 4 P's of marketing. So you've got price. So for us, there is no price. You know, people will provide voluntary donations. The place is the venue we use. The product is we provide a service to enable informed repair, and promotion is again based on my experience. I will just list these to you. So we use email marketing, and basically we have on our reg desk fully compliant with GDPR for people to leave their email if they wish. And we have a GDPR policy that covers all of this in terms of personal data. So we will email people to make them aware of the sessions. We also have built a good relationship with the local press because we're now seen as sort of part of the community. And so often, particularly if we have a big, a notable thing like maybe our 1000th repair, or we have key visitors, we will get in contact with the press and they will send down, you know, the editor. Or also, we found that the mayor, the new in Farnham, which is 40,000 person town, is that every, I think, 6 months there's a new mayor, or every 12 months, I forget, but they're always keen to come down for the photo opportunity. And we found, again, they've always been very positive. So that's another good thing about how, you know, how you weave into the community as well. So we've also produced banners, you know, just to raise awareness, because we're in the center of the town, and we you know, near a supermarket. So we put banners on the road and we get passing traffic through that. We also we've set up Twitter account, Instagram, Facebook. We also use LinkedIn. We also have one of our repairers is quite extrovert, and he likes going out and doing leaflets, distributing leaflets throughout the town. So he will go and visit a series of people who will take our leaflets. And again, you know, another issue is even some of the computer repair shops will take, or phone repair shops, although we don't do phones, will take our leaflets. So we're trying to work with people with this collaborative approach. We also occasionally will take a stand at an event in the town. We've also run some workshops and presentations. Those tend to be ad hoc. If we're asked, we'll make a decision. We're not, because of people's time, we're not in that sense proactively going out, you know, to present as such. This sort of sharing our experience through these types of Zooms is new for that. So use, and also social networks. And also what we found is word of mouth, like in a lot of things, is the strongest form of reference. So because people like what we do, people will tell one other person, etc., etc. So people like the experience, they tell others. So that's our strongest strategy. So use your full spectrum of communications tools. Front desk, very important. So having a friendly front desk to book people in, you know, and getting the people to do this, very, you know, very key part of the Repair Cafe. We were fortunate for a period of time in that we also had, you know, I'm of the age where the Duke of Edinburgh's award was going out into the wilds and setting up a tent and things like that. But now what Duke of Edinburgh's will do is students, I think A-level and earlier actually, they will, people can do projects in the community. So we had a very young guy, a young A-level student that came along, and he was brilliant. And it was brilliant to see his personal development, starting off very nervous, but he became a key part of the team within a year, helping on the front desk. He got his, you know, Duke of Edinburgh's aspects covered by that. But we had a brilliant young guy, and it was a real shame to see him go off to study astrophysics at Durham or whatever he did. But he, you know, there's how, you know, looking at different networks in your town to get people who can support you. And so also important to recognize that not all people come to Repair Cafe. That some people are coming there for a chat and a social discussion. They maybe feel isolated. So there's a social dimension to it. So people, you know, at the front desk, you know, need to be prepared to be, you know, have a chat a little bit sometimes, a bit more. That becomes a challenge when you have long lines of people. But, you know, the friendly atmosphere, you know, that we're able to generate is a real key, seen as one of our strengths. And And this is where the community point comes in. At our front desk, we have a variety of forms that we distribute that I'll quickly run through at the end. Some people are registered, they fill in a disclaimer, etc. And then what we also do from our side is that we weigh all the products so that we can identify what our potential diversion from landfill is if the products are repaired. And then we've developed an algorithm to create the CO2 emissions associated with that, which I'll come back, that has now been open sourced freely. So, people are booked in, they then go and sit down, in some chairs in the middle, and then, at the appropriate point, they will go to the relevant repair station. There's two issues there. What we have put in place is a system whereby people can only book in one product at a time, because we went through a situation of people trying to book in 4 products or 5 products. We're very insistent on that. And we generated a very clear policy that you can book in 1 product on each round. So you can bring 4 products, but only 1 in the round, because again, we're looking at an equitable approach for other people. So that's one key element. Also, you just have to be mindful sometimes because of various issues. We've seen this, people trying to push in and just people being fair and reasonable. When people sit down, you just have to monitor, again, that a little bit to make sure people aren't pushing in, because again, we see this happening. So we also had to develop a policy around what products we take and what we don't, and particularly what we don't. So we don't take things like petrol-powered items. We don't cover industrial products. We only take products you can fit through the door. There are other products that are a bit more unclear. Sort of when we get things that look like antiques. So what we had is a situation, again, this is why one needs a learning culture. We feel is that we had somebody brought in like a drawing set, where you kept pencils and pens in, quite old. And we had a new person on the front desk, and they just booked it in as a normal product, and it went to our repairer, who was very experienced in the furniture side, but he was perhaps a bit more heavy-handed than he should be, and it disassembled in front of our eyes. She was not at all happy with it about the situations, neither were we. So what we did was put in a policy that if any product looks unusual or fragile or looks like an antique, it is checked with a experienced repairer before we take the product, because you could have uncomfortable dialogue afterwards, and there could be other issues. So again, front desk is very important. That's the first point of contact. We have tried to get people to pre-book in products, but that doesn't work from our experience. So so we've got a series of different forms we use. For example, disclaimer, house rules. We have 2 forms, one for EE products, electronic, electrical, and non-EE products, where people record, what the product is, what the problem is, and then that will be filled in by the repairer and then returned. We'd add the weight of the product, what the approximate value is. So we collect quite a lot of data because impact is important. And generally that works pretty well. We also have, a variety of other forms for the volunteers, new volunteers. And what I should say going back, which I didn't mention before, is that we're tightening up a little bit on our volunteer process. So all the volunteers will fill in something on their background and expertise. But we're in a process now of perhaps, that there's more of a process that the volunteers have to go through before they're sort of fully on board. Because we had one instance where a guy came in, he had a chat with me, and what we generally let them do is have a look around, see if they're very comfortable, come back next session, sit down. But we had this sort of odd occurrence where one guy in that process picked up a repair in one of the aisles and then negotiated with the customer and took it out. Or he was trying to take it out. We would say, well, what's going on here? So we've realised that we need to formalise our process a bit more, than perhaps we have, particularly as we continue to grow. There's a series of forms we use. But again, another point that I must make, particularly on the health and safety, is that we're trying to keep it simple, simple as possible. This is not, and what we found again, it's a bit of a balancing act, particularly from our electronics guru guy. He's 70, sharp as mustard, a brilliant guy, but he wants to be busy, but he doesn't want it to feel like work anymore. He doesn't want to feel too pressurized. So there's an issue there about the balance, on the flow of activity. Generally, we're very busy, but we're aware of that sort of tension for people, because everybody's a volunteer. A number of our volunteers are over 65, still brilliant, still doing stuff, but one needs to be aware of this. And in fact, this is the guy, Peter, our brilliant guy, who does things like still makes simulation units for jet fighters at age 72, I think. So we see this going on. We see this collaboration going on, sometimes between the repairers and the customers. And what we have is something called the share repair approach, where people can observe. We encourage people to observe the process rather than go off and get a cup of coffee. So they're learning something from this. We're now starting to see drones coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So moving on quickly, again, we collect a lot of data, and what we set up as a baseline to collect that data from day one. So we build up that data. But what we've also done, just moving on quickly, is to done ad hoc research surveys amongst the visitors. So we completed our second survey, where we had about 90 of the visitors completed this, and actually, very interestingly, a significant proportion of ladies filled this in compared to guys. So I think we had 93 completing the whole thing. But I just pulled out one particularly interesting point, at least it was interesting for me, to show the impact, and the impact you may be having yourselves. Is did attending the Repair Cafe make you more or less likely to attempt to repair a product yourself? So did it give you confidence, perhaps alongside with videos online, to repair a product outside the Repair Cafe? And what we see is it has given people some confidence to try and do a repair. And and a number of people have tried to do something themselves. And the most successful ones have been in, actually, interestingly, electrical and clothing. Some people found it easy, some people were neutral. So that's a wider impact of the Repair Cafe that you may not be aware of. People going through the process may be trying to do repair cafes themselves, repairs themselves. So in terms of our activity, what we've done, this is the key data. We communicate this, and people like to, because I've been around business and sustainability for 30 years, I'm interested in real impact now. And I think a lot of people are, what is the impact of what you're doing? And we do this. People like to see, this, and we communicate this. And as I mentioned, what we've also done is we've been able to get a little bit of funding through the university, is to basically produce a calculator that will calculate the CO2 emissions associated with repairs. And this is now freely available online through our website. So if you want to calculate CO2 emissions on a generic level with your products or in specific product categories, there's a free tool to help you do this. And it's very simple to be used, but it's based on a very substantial methodology that was developed in a master's thesis in Surrey University. So that leads me also to the point of, if you have a local university or college, maybe, and maybe there is an opportunity to set projects for students, maybe engage design students, maybe even mentoring students there. We've tried to do this with UCA, to provide a brilliant mentoring opportunity for people with, who wanting to build skills in different sorts of repair, such as clothing and textiles, with textile students coming in. And we've had a few come through that process because they learn lessons that they'll never learn in the curriculum. But also, as we mentioned earlier, there are, films students across many courses now, they like to make films. So this is another opportunity. And so in moving towards the end now, there are, one of the things that in producing this, I thought actually is quite interesting to think about, particularly if you're early stage, is what is the values of your repair cafe? And, something to think about to get buy-in from your management group, but also your volunteers. And I would say our values are, we're committed. We will turn up each time, and it will be there, rain or shine. There, as we advertise. But we're all committed people. We've got a learning culture there, so we will learn. We're learning by doing and improving. We hope each time. We have a people-orientated approach, and not forgetting all volunteers are volunteers. They do what they're comfortable with, and people, you shouldn't forget that. Everybody's a volunteer. People should just do what they're, and we are interested in that impact. And one thing that, again, in doing this, although I didn't do this at the beginning, I would recommend, particularly if you're thinking about starting up or if you're early stage, is although, of course, the vast majority of repair cafes are a civil society organisation, a community workshop undertaking repair, to think about a business model. What are you trying to achieve? And there are various tools out there, something called the business model canvas. So again, this might be a useful tool if you're setting up, just to think through the sorts of issues. And I won't dwell on that. So I think I'll just go into the CV19 stuff that Dave mentioned. And I can't see that, Dave. So I'll just move through that very quickly. And then perhaps you could bring those points up in the questions. So I can keep focused. So CV19, so that sort of led us fairly quickly, after the government advice, we decided as the trustees to stop. But then, a few of us started to think, what could we do online? And particularly as, and again, this is perhaps one of our values. We have this share repair, mindset. So thinking within the context of #share repair, we thought, could we do stuff online? Could we start to share experiences? And what we've done is to it's led us to set up through my colleague Dave, who's on this fielding the questions. He's done some brilliant work setting up the WhatsApp groups for our different repairers to share their knowledge and experience. So different groups for people to share knowledge and experience. So this has been a good way to bring people together. But also what we've done is set up a Facebook session, 2-hour session. We learned a lot of lessons there. We learned that Facebook to run a sort of advice and chat session is a bit clunky, literally. But it sort of worked, and I think we provided around about, in a 2-hour session, around about 15 to 20 pieces of advice to various people. We've recognized that we're going to improve this, but it's another way just to keep engaged with people. And interestingly, in running this session, a couple of people have shared that they're also undertaking, they're still undertaking physical repair activities, some, I think, in a village environment, in a large garage, and there are others doing other stuff in a restricted manner. So what I'm thinking about doing is running another, facilitating another webinar, if people are interested, where they might share their experience of how they're managing and coming up with new models in the lockdown period. And the idea being, we find some way of maybe doing a one-page template, people share that, and then people just report on what they're doing. And I think that might be interesting for everyone. So if people are interested, do drop a note to give us, to indicate interest. Because if there was, sufficient interest, we'll do it. So going forward and thinking about, in the post-lockdown worlds, you know, how repair cafes work. Well, of course, you're going to have all sorts of issues, potentially with social distancing and queuing, sanitization, you know, at the front desk, you know, the contact points on, with the customers, visitors with the products. You've got also, you know, touching the forms, you know, many contact points. So how this is happening, you know, wearing gloves, you know, masks, etc., you know, it's going to be a challenge. So we're starting to think about what this might look like, but we haven't put our plans in motion. So again, you know, some sort of follow-up webinar where people may share what they're doing, what their thinking is, you know, how they're adapting at the moment, may be useful to the whole community. And again, if there's interest in this, we're happy to facilitate this. To think about the future, you know, this is our space. We were just about to move. The church is changed itself into a wider venue, and they've said, we will give you access to a larger part of the church, because our last session, or the second last session, we got 110 people through the session, and we're just getting jammed. So whilst this isn't our church, I couldn't find one online. They're basically clearing out a lot of the pews, and we're going to have this much larger space. But we were literally in the place of planning for that transition when we went into lockdown. So for us, that's the future issue. The other future issue is we're vested in the 3D printing and repair, and we're doing this. We've repaired a number of products, bespoke products using 3D printing. But again, classic Repair Cafe challenge. Again, one of our brilliant trustees, who has set the whole 3D printing thing up, he's moving to Scotland. So we're having to go through a transition of a couple of the trustees training on 3D printing. So this is what we're looking forward to moving back to. The dinner we held last year amongst all the volunteers, where we had nearly 100% turn up, because what we decided as the trustees is to run a dinner for all our volunteers to give back to everybody. And I think this was appreciated. But again, it's the point, you don't have a repair cafe unless you have the people. So any questions or observations? Perhaps we'll pick up a few from the chat box, Dave, and then maybe without it becoming too chaotic, we may try and open it up through physical questions. So if you want to pick up on any clusters, Dave, and that would be great.
Can you hear me now, Martin?
Okay, can't hear you, Dave. Are you muted?
No, the other people can hear me apparently.
No problem with your
well, no, other people are telling me they can hear me.
Pay for venue free. Okay, so no, as I mentioned before, we don't pay for our venue. Fortunately, we are hosted within a church, although we're not religiously associated. They have a so-called eco-congregation strategy, I think. I probably have the name wrong, or they're a green church, in effect. So they find our initiative very good. We don't pay for the church, the venue, but what the venue does, the church get, is they get passing traffic in their cafe, so they get coffee, and then we will donate, a 10% of our income each year to the church to keep a good relationship with them. So CV19, as I mentioned there, you know, we've started online activities. We are in a position where we're starting to think through slowly what repair cafes might look like in the you know, new abnormal, if you like. But we haven't physically opened yet. We're aware that some have, and as I mentioned before, you know, we're happy to facilitate some sort of webinar in the future for people to share experience, both on what they're doing and how we might manage repair cafes in the future. So to enable me to do this, I just need you guys just to say, so we just pick up in the chat, you know, if you have some experience of doing something or you'd be interested in joining. So visitors booking in advance. No, they don't. We've tried that. I found that with my other experience with the SMEs and micro entrepreneurs, they're all prepared to do that. But for citizens, we've not found that works. The only interaction we really have beforehand with citizens and visitors is we ask that they identify unusual products so that we can then share that with the repairers to see if we can physically do that. So if there is something that we can't deal with, there's no point in them coming. So again, we tried booking systems, but basically they turn up on the day. Repair outside good visibility. So basically, a number of the repairers do have their own workshops, and particularly a number of the electronics guys, they particularly our engineers, they physically cannot leave a product unrepaired. So they feel they have to take it home, repair it, and then they will liaise outside of the repair cafe with the customer. Or the other scenario we have is maybe components are identified through using online, and then we'll ask the customer to buy those components and they'll be fitted in the next session. Again, similarly, our furniture guy will take products back to his workshop, and he will repair and liaise with the customer. So that's what we'll do. I mean, again, bad case scenario that you have to learn from, and always there's sometimes, one bad apple. Sadly, it does happen in reality and life. One of our hugest conversations with our trustees is we had one repairer on the furniture side that was eventually, in effect, asked to leave, in that he would take products back to his workshop, but we never saw any of the donations being put back in the pot. So there's still some ethics there, and we didn't really, we were very reticent about approaching him about the issue, but it became such an apparent issue that we had to make the point, and he ended up leaving. It was a huge shame because he had a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, but he just wasn't playing the game. He just missed the point. He was just pocketing the donation, sadly. Repair cafes in the shopping centre, yeah, well, could be, because there's a lot of traffic. If there was a venue there, say a vacant shop, maybe you could negotiate with the owner of the shopping centre or your local town council to use that, because there's a lot of traffic. We came across one example of a borough council who was running a repair cafe, and they made a deliberate decision to run the repair cafe in a poorer borough of that particular city. The issue you had there was because it was in quite a remote community location, there wasn't much physical traffic there. And also the sociological aspect of this is that they weren't very successful about attracting people, because people didn't want to be seen to be bringing a product to be repaired. There was a social dimension, a psychological issue. They more wanted to be seen with a new product, not be seen to be having a product repaired. I'm aware in other countries like Berlin, Ghent, and Amsterdam have the highest proportion of repair cafes in boroughs and parts of the city, about 25. That in Berlin you have very strong repair cafes in Turkish communities where the Gastarbeiter, the traveling workers work, where it's much more pragmatic about people from an economic point of view, extending the life of products through repair from an economic point of view. And again, this may become more of an issue in the post-CV19 world. Maybe it's not just, as we've found, the majority of reasons why people attend a repair cafe, because we have an older demographic, is people just physically don't want to waste products. They don't want to put a product in the bin that they think could work. So there's a strong environmental ethic there. I think there is, to some extent, an economic issue amongst some. There's absolutely a social dimension of just coming along, but maybe in the post-CV19 world, that economic aspect of extending the life of products through repair may become more important. Recording available. It should be in time. I'm going through various technical issues with the university in terms of GDPR and Zoom being a third party, but I think we've cracked it. So, so in due course, a link to the Zoom will be available. Chat follow-up. So if people have very specific questions, either to email me direct or add your email and your question in the chat. If they're short and concise, happy to follow up, but please keep it short and concise. Experience from the something world. I can't read that. Something world. Round world. Sorry, I can't. I'll have to move on to that one. So slides sent out. So we will reply the recording, and within the recording there will be the slides will be there. So I think I've probably gone over time. Sorry about that, but if people are still interested and I still see people on board, maybe I think if those are the key clusters, I think if people have any very specific questions, if they're short and concise, if they want to unmute themselves, and if we can somehow attempt to manage this without it becoming, you know, a bun fight of people getting their questions in. So I think, you know, so maybe, okay, so I see Ken clapping there in virtual world, so thank you for that appreciation. So I think if anybody does have any questions, either put them back in the chat box or ask, and you know, we'd appreciate if you found it useful. If you think it would be useful to rerun it for other parts of your organization or your team, we're happy to do that again, perhaps in July. Again, you know, if that CV19 workshop, sorry, I'm still in post not CV19 world. If a CV19 Zoom would be useful, just drop a note there. You know, if we get sufficient interest, we'll do it. So again, if there's no more questions or nobody wants to ask a direct question, yes, please email anything short and sweet or add it in the chat box. And, you know, please let us know if it's useful. And last warning, if not, I'll just leave it open for a couple more minutes. And if people have any last minute thoughts or ideas, you know, please either ask a question or drop it, and then I'll close it down in a couple of minutes. So
I'm just going, Martin.
Is somebody trying to ask a question?
Hello. I just wanted to make a comment, really.
Sorry, it's breaking up.
Sorry, can you hear me?
So maybe it's something to do with the sound. So if somebody's trying to ask a question, maybe put it in the chat box, and maybe Dave can pick it up. I think somebody is trying to ask a question.
It's not really a question. I just wanted to make a point, actually.
I think there's some issue with the sound.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I know somebody's trying to say something. I think it's a lady, but I'm not.
It is a lady.
I can't. I'm not picking up anything.
If you tell me, I'll hold a piece of paper up.
Okay.
So maybe put it in the chat box.
It's been very interesting listening to you.
Can't hear you. Sorry. Can you put it in the chat box, and then Dave can?
Yeah,
everyone else can hear. I just
either try again on sound or put it in a post-it for me.
It wasn't really a question. I just wanted to say that
it's frustrating. I can hear you attempt to ask a question.
You might not be able to hear me, but I think that others can.
Sound.
Apologies. I'm getting lots of messages.
Sorry, it's not coming through.
I know that you can't, but I'm getting messages that other people can. So if you could just bear with me.
Martin, we're something okay. We are talking okay.
Okay. In the interim, until we have...
I can't hear you. That's the problem. You may be able to hear me, but I can't hear you.
I know, but if you would let me finish,
I think there's
other
a problem
people
with
can hear
the
me.
sound, because I know Dave is holding up post-its here because he
Martin,
can't say anything.
Martin,
he's trying to say something.
Everyone else
can
can hear me.
Unmute yourself, Dave, again, just to see if it is a common problem.
Everyone else can hear me, Martin. So if you kindly, I know. Everyone else can, though. So kindly let me finish. I just wanted to make a point that
if whoever is trying to ask the question, I cannot hear you. I'm sorry.
I know you
Sorry.
can't.
But if you do have a question, please add it. And
it
Dave
was more, right, I'm going to say it anyway. Martin, bear with me. I'm going to say it anyway. In the interim, whilst we...
Sorry, I can't hear you.
While we figure out how to
I think Dave's got the...
relaunch our cafe.
So, everyone else can hear you okay?
Yes, they can. Yeah, write a chat. Okay.
Okay. So
we are aligning.
So I'll leave it that I think I'll leave it open maybe for any final comments in the chat box or any final questions that Dave can pick up, because literally I can't hear it. I suspect then it may be either Zoom or my connection. Well, at least we got through it. That's the good thing. That's the key thing. So I think Dave's given me the thumbs up. So I think thank you everybody. I'm now closing it down. You know, any final
send me a note in
comments,
the chat.
positive, negative, or neutral, just drop it in the chat box. If not, you know, happy to run this again if you think it's useful. I'll do it again in July. We'll then also be running another separate Zoom, which Dave will facilitate, about sharing repair knowledge on different products. So that is another one we will run. And I see Ken with thumbs up there. So we'll be doing that, which Dave will be facilitating and running. Then we're also prepared to run the CV19 one if people are interested. Look forward to seeing you online in one shape or again in the future. Thank you everybody for your patience with the technology, and have a good day, as they say somewhere in the world. Great, thank you very much. I'm going to go and get a coffee now. Okay, great.